Good morning. There's only two of us on here. CJ and Sapana. Here we go. Here's Christy. Might just give it another minute or two and just see if we can get some more people online. Okay, lovely. We've got a few people online now, so thank you to everybody. I've just switched on all of your cameras and your microphones, so if you've got a camera that's come up, if you might want to close it if you'd like. Very happy to see your faces as we go through this today. Just going to share my screen. And we'll just pop up our presentation for today. All right, so there's a few things. So firstly, thank you all for actually jumping in on the session this morning. There are just a few things that I'd like to cover off coming up to the end of the financial year and to make sure that you've got your CPD points up. First thing that I will give you an update on is thank you to everybody who's been so generous and kind with their thoughts for Sharon. We do have a little bit of an update. She's very unwell, as you can imagine, still in hospital, and we just sent around an update this morning that the family, she's starting to respond a little bit, starting to wake a little bit. Still intubated though. So very long road for Sharon to come, and thank you all for all of your lovely thoughts and well wishes as well. Jumping into today, there's a few things that I'd like to cover. Obviously our general advice warning, so come and talk to me if you've got any questions about any of this. Just a reminder for your CPD, talking about the informed consent for the insurance commissions, which is a new element. We spoke about this back in November, but it's now becoming reality from the 9th of July. I know, weird dates, but that's what it is. Just talking about what you're required to do in these situations where you've got insurance policies that you're writing for clients. I know a number of you have kind of moved away from that, but it's good for you to understand these elements. Ongoing fee consent, there's a bit of a legal timing. So the timing requirements, unintended consequences, which means that it's not as streamlined as the government were envisaging. So just talking about that and what you need to do. And then just a couple of refreshers about your AML CTF, about your client identification and identifying any suspicious matters, as well as the DDO TMD obligations. So reminder about those things and what you need to be doing. You know, it's so easy that we get so caught up in all of the new requirements that we forget about some of these older ones that have been sitting there, and we get busy and we forget them. So really important that we are doing everything that we need to do, and I'll give you some tips on how you can do those things as well. CPD, I have to do this every year, and every year you have CJ emailing you and calling you and saying, what are you doing? Where are you at? Actually, we know where you're at. This is an incredibly important requirement under your role as a financial planner. It has been around. I've been doing compliance in AFSLs for 20 years now. It's been around at least as long as that. Okay, so it's not a new thing. There are actually no exceptions. Okay, so since they brought in the new rules a few years ago, there are no exceptions to not completing your CPD. I can't give you an extension. I can't give allowances. The only allowance that we can give is if you have notified us in advance that you're going to be working part-time. and then you only get a reduction of 4 CPD points per annum. Now, I've got one of our advisors at the moment who's on maternity leave. I've had to email her and say, hey, you actually need to do all of this. Otherwise, you are actually recorded on your public record on the Financial Advisor Register through MoneySmart. It actually states there that you have failed to complete CPD, and there is no ability in there to explain why. Okay, we had an advisor a few years ago, didn't complete, I think it was less than 10 CPD points because they had medical issues. So had laser, couldn't see, had ongoing long-term medical issues. We were unable to give an extension. We were unable to do anything. We had to report to ASIC. Okay, there is no opportunity after the midnight on the 30th of June to complete your CPD. We provide you with Kaplan On Track. Okay, we have for a very long time. Kaplan On Track will fulfill all of your CPD needs. We had previously in the past, before all of the very prescriptive elements under the legislation of professionalism and ethics, etc., we had tried to fulfill a lot of your CPD points across the board. That's not become possible now because of, otherwise we'd be doing ethics every single session for 3 hours at a time. So I don't particularly want to have to go through that over and over again. I'm sure that you don't. However, Kaplan have the articles. Okay, they're there. You can attend other PD sessions, any webinars, CPD sessions, conferences, anything. The ensemble group do two kind of all day PD days every year. You have the Alpha conference. There's lots of bits and pieces. There's lots of recorded webinars these days. So BT Academy do some really great ethics stuff, and it's recorded, so you can go back, answer what's today's colour, and get your CPD certificate. Remember that this is about developing your skills. Okay, it's developing your knowledge, developing your skills. It's not just a ticker box. All right, so we've given you plenty of opportunity to do lots of those areas that you need to do. So please complete your training. I can't give you any allowances at all. I want to talk to you about the informed consent for the insurance commission. So this is one, it's kind of been a little bit of a sleeping dog. And now it's become more and more, if you're reading any of the media articles, there's quite a bit of noise about this at the moment. So one of the unintended consequences of this informed consent is when you need to set up a new account for a client. Okay, so if you're setting up a new account, sorry, I'm thinking about something else completely, so ignore that for a second. We're talking about informed consent for insurance commissions, which is the requirement to actually get clients to sign off and say that they accept and they understand that you're going to take commissions for your insurance. Sorry, I was skipping ahead. So this starts from the 9th of July 2025. Okay, so there are a few elements in that you need to ensure you have outlined to the client. ASIC have said that you can get a verbal consent from the client for this. However, that verbal consent must be followed up with a written consent. Okay, so you must record all of that, send it off to the client as well, and have it sent back. Okay, so even though you're talking to the client about it, that's not sufficient just to record that you've had a verbal conversation. It needs to still be in writing. This applies to any policy placed, insurance policy placed from the 9th of July this year. So there may be a few of you already who have advice out there for clients. You're going through the application process, but the policy is not yet set. You need to be very careful around this because it's actually against the law from the 9th of July if the policy is placed after that time, if you don't have this consent. Okay, it's quite a simple one that we've kind of put into the authority to proceed. Now, the things that you need to be aware of is that if there's any renewals afterwards. So we'll talk about those renewals. So if there's renewals and it's an increase, you do need to get that consent again. Okay, so in the Xplan templates, this is live in Xplan now. In the authority to proceed, it has a statement. We consent to the insurance commissions outlined earlier in this statement of advice. We understand that it is a requirement of the law that our consent must be obtained before the payment of these insurance commissions, and once provided is irrevocable. Now, though that's terminology that the law states we have to include, okay? So you need to disclose to the client the name of the insurer under the relevant product, the monetary benefit. So it states here it needs to be expressed as a percentage range of the policy costs, so your ongoing commissions and upfront commissions. Now, don't read this as a standalone that you only have to disclose in percentage, because other elements of Corporations Act states that any time you have a statement of a percentage in relation to fees, you must, if it's reasonable, you must calculate and give an example. Okay, so it may be the 20% plus GST of the ongoing, and you've got to also extract that out. So based on this premium, this would be this amount. Okay, the frequency with which you receive it, and the benefit over which the period over which the benefits are covered by the consent. The nature of the services. Now, this is quite interesting. The nature of the services that you will provide to the client in relation to the relevant product, if any. So if you are not saying, and you need to be careful about this, and particularly for those of our advisors who are risk-only advisors and don't have ongoing arrangements, fee arrangements, you need to make sure that you're not promising something that you can't deliver. So you shouldn't be saying for the commissions that we're receiving, we'll offer you an annual review. Okay, so just being careful about the wording there. The law also provides that this information doesn't need to be disclosed if it's already been disclosed. So if it's already in the SOA, we don't need to disclose it separately. And that's where we think the easiest way to do it is in the SOA. So in the SOA, in our statement of fees that we receive and how we're remunerated, we have a lot of this detail already. Okay, Explain is now set up that you will need to put all of that information in, and it'll take you through the process there. Okay, so the question is, do you need to meet the informed consent requirement again when an insurance product is renewed? You don't when it's a renewal, but if there's an increase, you are likely to need to do that. If it is a reduction, it's likely that you don't need the informed consent. Okay, so ASIC always have had this approach that if you over disclose, there's no action to be taken, but if it's under disclosed, that's where the problems lie. Okay, so information disclosed to the client before they agreed to be issued or sold that product is otherwise unchanged at the renewal. So if there's no change, you don't need extra consent. For life risk insurance, it included the expected renewal period as part of the period over which the monetary benefits covered by the consent could be given. And we don't deal with general insurance. So just making sure that you are disclosing that if you're going to increase. They talk about varying the client consent. Now, they've made it very clear that you can't actually vary the consent to not include certain things, and that's really about the nature of the services provided, or that's really about the informed consent and being irrevocable, etc. But if there is a variation, if there's they've specifically stated if there is a buyout of an insurance fund with another, so there's a merger of the business, therefore the name of the product changes, you will need to do an informed consent, which is quite interesting. And until that actually happens, we'll see who actually steps into that role, whether that the insurers will keep the name so that we don't have to do this, or what the expectation is behind that. Okay, if there is anything in terms of the rate, which won't be likely given everything is standardized, or the frequency of the monetary benefit. So if the clients were paying annually and now they're going to monthly for whatever reason, then you will need to do a new consent, because you actually have to state in the consent the frequency. Okay, so there is elements in there where and mechanisms for you to change and vary that client consent. Again, it must be in writing to the client. If it's verbally from the client, then you have to provide them a written consent anyway, and it needs to be done as soon as practicable after. In terms of action steps, what you need to do now is review your current applications and make sure that any that are currently in process, you've got some certainty, which I don't know if you will, that they're going to be issued before the 9th of July. Otherwise, go in and get these consents for the clients. If you're in that situation, let's have a chat, because I'll provide you with some documentation that you can send out for that will be separate from the authority to proceed. We've already updated the SOAs in Xplan. If you have some other templates, please let me know. It's very, very important. This is a legal requirement. There are some serious consequences if this is not met, and it's determined to be a breach. So come and talk to me and we'll get you rolling as you need to be. Make sure you're training your staff. Make sure they know that this is a requirement. Make sure that they are they are getting that consent from the clients. That section is very clear in the authority to proceed. ASIC outlined that this is reminiscent of 20 years ago when we spoke about logos alongside the licensee logo. They had to have the same footprint. I remember measuring logos to make sure that they had the same footprint on a page. So ASIC in this regard have also spoken about this consent needs to be very clear. It needs to be the same size font as all of the other disclosure. It must be very clear to the client that there's a consent element in there. Make sure you've also updated, so in Xplan there should be some a section where you can confirm that that consent has been gathered, or making sure that your processes are updated to include that step to check that the consent has been collected. Now, this is what I started to talk about before, apologies. Talking about ongoing fee consent. So this is the consent to deduct fees, okay, from a product. So there are some unintended consequences here. And as I said before, this is quite a bit of noise in the media about this at the moment. So under the ongoing fee arrangement reforms, the financial advisors must obtain written consent from clients to deduct fees from product accounts. It must include prescriptive legislative wording, specify the product account number, and be provided to the relevant product issuer before any deductions occur. Now, the issue that we get is when we're talking to a client, we're giving advice, we like to get everything done altogether, which makes sense. It streamlines the process. It makes the process much easier for the client, and for you that everything is there. However, you cannot have a fee consent that does not have a product account. Okay, so if the account number is not available, if they don't have the account number, you actually can't do the fee consent. So this can be for new investments, can be for rollovers, etc. That it just does it. It creates this catch-22 situation where we can't finalise it. You can't get the account number until the account's actually been set up. So you're giving advice to a client, but you need consent from the client to actually set up the account in the first place. And unless the client actually comes in again, they're not going to be physically present with you to sign the consent. Okay, so this then draws out our process. So the impact is that you're obviously going to have to re-engage the clients later on just to complete the ongoing fee consent. So resending that consent form with the legislative disclosures, re-explaining what they've already agreed to during the SOA presentation, and there's delays because of the admin sequencing behind this. Okay, so more friction, more inefficiency. So at this point in time, there's been no change to that. It is a legislative requirement, which means there's a number of steps to go through if they're going to do anything about that, which I don't know if they will actually change any of this. So what you should be doing is understanding that where there is not an account already set up, you will not be able to send out the ongoing fee consent with the advice document. Okay, it means that you need to be aware of your ongoing service agreement and the wording in that, as well as the wording in your SOA. Okay, so some of our SOAs will refer to you've agreed to the ongoing fee arrangement in our ongoing service agreement, and we've tried to capture everything all together. There's going to be you'll need to tweak some of the wording in that to make sure that it's not saying this document relates to this document which you've already done, because you haven't done it. Okay, so you're going to need to be very clear with the wording in those documents. You'll also need to make sure that you explain the process to the client. This, again, more documentation. We're going to have to set up your account. Once we've got that account number, then we're going to have to set up your ongoing fee consent to deduct the fees from that account. Remember, this only applies where we're deducting fees from an account. And then we'll have to issue it, you'll have to sign it, we'll have to get it back, we'll have to send it on to the product provider. Okay, so all of the aims to standardize and to make the process a lot easier, streamline the process, hasn't really eventuated. Okay, so remember that, so in your you will need consent from the client to actually set up the account. So your authority to proceed will still cover that setting up, and you can have those discussions about this is what it looks like and these are the fees that we will charge you. And that can still be part of your SOA and your ongoing service agreement, okay? But what you need to be careful of is that what we've done in the past, what we can do in most circumstances, is that ongoing service agreement also makes up that ongoing fee consent. Okay, so these will need to be separated. Explain this to the client, make sure that you're managing their expectations and that they've got that information. I've just got here important, this document, so referring to your the SOA, the information in the SOA does not authorise a deduction. It just meets the ongoing fee arrangement agreement obligations. Okay, so you do still need that separate ongoing fee consent to deduct. Don't know why that's a big. So just going through there, tips for your clients. So setting those client expectations early, using templated follow-ups. So again, you're going to have to add something else into your processes, your workflow processes. Okay, so have we got that ongoing fee consent? Is it separate? How are we doing that? Any questions so far about that? I know it's a bit of a pain in the backside. Okay. I'm going to burn through this a little bit quickly. So it would be great if we had some feedback and some questions coming up, but I'll push on through AML CTF. There are some new kind of elements within AML CTF. It's previously we've had Part A, Part B requirements. They're joining those. As a license, as financial advisors, we get captured under Part B, Item 54. And what that means is we are responsible for identifying the clients. So though the product providers must ensure that the clients are who they say they are, they've recognised that the only people who have access to the clients are actually the financial advisors. So they've very graciously passed on the obligation to make sure that those things are done to the financial advisors. So we talk about financial advisors being the first line of defence against financial crime. It seems so out of reach and so out of the realms of possibility, but it's very real. It's very, very real that you can be targeted. Not you can, that clients who are not doing the right thing see it as an easy out to go through you to place products, investments, etc. That may be used for money laundering and terrorism financing. So be very aware of this. You do have some very strict obligations to identify clients. In our audits, we've been seeing a few things kind of go by the wayside that, you know, we've spoken about for a number of years. This, again, is not a new requirement, but the completion of the FSC FAAA forms is a big one. Okay, so we get a little bit lazy maybe when the product providers aren't actually calling for these documents. The product providers do not need to call for these documents. It's not a requirement. The actual legal requirement is that we collect them. Now, it's embedded within our distribution agreements with the product providers as well, and they ask us each year to do a declaration that all of the clients that we've identified have FSC FAAA forms on file. Okay. The other thing that these forms actually do is they lend us towards documenting our verification process. So remembering with identification, we have to both certify and verify. So your certification is quite an interesting one. Now, we had this come up recently with a PY candidate that PY candidates, even though they might be in Q3 or Q4 and on the register, are not able to certify documents. Previously, it used to be that you had to have been on the register for at least 2 years before you could certify documents. Now it is that you just need to be a fully fledged financial advisor. So out of PY, and then you can certify. So that certification, remember, is that you're stating that you have actually seen that the original document. You've seen their ID, whether that be a passport, whether that be driver's license, whether that be any other identifying document. You have cited the original one. And what you're confirming in that certification, when you certify that, you're certifying that the copy that has been taken is a true and original, a true copy of the original document. That's what it is. That's what it's for. Okay. If you hold, and we do recommend kind of a few steps here. When you collect ID from a client, make sure that it's in colour and it's very clear. Okay, so that's the first step. Second step is to keep 2 copies. Okay, the first one will be not certified, and the second one will be certified. And the one that is certified will show you who certified it and when. Okay, sorry. That's really important because only the person who cited the original document can state that they have cited the original document. Okay, do it in color because the color ones maintain integrity a lot better. You can see a lot more of the details. Only the person who has certified in the first place can certify again, unless somebody else has actually cited the original document. Okay, and by cited, I mean not over the camera, but they have cited it in real life. Okay, so they can touch the document, they can pick it up. That needs to be who certifies that document. The verification step is one that is often missed and one that's often forgotten about. But these FSC, FAAA forms actually assist you to do that. So when you're verifying a document, what you're actually doing is looking at your records already. So is the client name the same that they gave you? Is their date of birth the same date that they gave you? Is their address the same address that they gave you? So as you're working through that FSC form, you're actually checking all of the information. Okay, so you should have not just the client ID available, but also your records. So whether that be fact find or in Xplane or however you've got your data, you should be checking against that to check that the information that they've given you matches. That's the verification step. Okay. You should also be then confirming beneficial ownership, etc., and collecting the right documentation for that. All of these forms are available on our website, and they will walk you through for each different entity what is required to identify them. Okay. These steps can't be missed. I have to make a declaration every year to say that we have collected it and they are on file. Even if the product provider does not ask for them, it is important that you are collecting them and retaining them on file. CJ and I are checking these in your audits. They need to be there. Okay. Also looking at, so I've got a question down here, and this really goes into customer due diligence, and looking at who the customer is and identifying that it's a real need that they have. And by real need, I mean that they've come to you for a real purpose. And you're looking at why is the client asking for advice now. Okay, so it is something that is tangible, you can demonstrate. So when we talk about a client coming to you and saying, hey, I've got $1 million and I need to invest it, you start asking questions. Why isn't it already invested? Where has it come from? How long have you had it? And can you verify and can you confirm where it's come from? Okay, if suddenly there's $1 million, why? So you are the ones that need to be asking these questions and kind of going through those steps. You also need to be identifying your high risk clients. So who are your politically exposed people? Okay, so there is a link between, they call them PEPs, PEPs and finance terrorism. Okay, so you need to have a look at, as well as money laundering. These people have been identified as being high risk, and there's enhanced checks that need to be done. So there's steps if you have any clients who are politically exposed people. So they are people who are in government, have been in government previously, and I mean higher up in government. They are related to somebody who's in government. These things are really important that you are checking and you're asking background. Other things for high-risk clients include complex structures or vague sources of funds. So these are red flags. Clients from high-risk jurisdictions. So you need to dig a bit deeper. You know, if they've come from Nigeria, not necessarily means that they're high risk, but you've also identified this is a high-risk jurisdiction. Is there something else that I need to look into here? Other things you're looking at with clients, if they've got an odd urgency, this needs to be placed today. I have to have it in there tomorrow, whether they're nervous or there's a reluctance to share information. You're all very experienced advisors, and those who are coming up as training are training alongside very experienced advisors. You know when something just seems a little bit off. So this is where you need to ask some more questions about where funds have come from, why they need to do these things straight away, why they're not sharing information. So this is where you need to use those skills that you've developed to pay attention and to explore a little bit more. So politically exposed persons, so we've got here government officials, international organisation leaders and close associates. You must always screen for your PEPs before providing advice. So in those forms from the FAAA, FSC, there is a section there that you can identify if they're a politically exposed person as well. If you do have politically exposed people, please come and talk to us first. And you need to document everything that you've done for those clients and where they're sitting, and where they've got their funds and their wealth from. Suspicious matter reporting. This is incredibly important. You need to report to us immediately if you suspect that the client is laundering funds, that there's terrorism, fraud, or fake identity. All of those things, you need to be raising that with us, and then we will step you through all of the suspicious matter reporting steps that need to be done. So timeframes, it's 24 hours for terrorism and 3 business days for other. I'd like that to be 24 hours for everything, so just come and talk to us. You need to include who, what, where, when, how, and why. And if in doubt, contact us. So get as much information together as you can. Talk about why you suspect it, what indicators have led you to that. Don't be afraid to either. Okay. sometimes we kind of negate things in our heads going, no, surely that's not it, or no, I'm a bit confused. Let's have a chat. Okay, it's always better to have a chat. One of the updates to AML CTF recently has been that it is now illegal to tip off the client. Okay, we've always said in the past you shouldn't be tipping off the client, but they've now made it illegal to tip off the client that you've formed a suspicion about them, or that you've submitted a report. Okay, so you never tell them that you're suspicious. You never tell them you've submitted a report. You don't talk about AUSTRAC or ask weirdly worded questions. It is a crime and you need to keep it confidential. Okay, so obviously between the licensee, you need to be talking and telling us those things so that we can walk you through the SMR. Otherwise, you should not be talking to anybody else about it. Just in regards to the AML CTF as well, about cyber fraud and being alert there. So urgent emails, we're seeing more and more of these things where clients are saying, hey, I need this money and I need it to go into this account, and it's the account that you don't know, and not one that you've got recorded on file. So always talking to the clients. Whenever something strange has come up, they're asking for money to be put in an account. Even if it is an account that you know of, call them, talk to them, confirm that this is what they're wanting to do. Okay, never confirm their identity via email, never confirm their actions where they're asking for money to be transferred via email, and always hold off until you're actually very confident that it's really them, and stay cautious. So key takeaways: know your client and verify identity before you start. Do your your FSC, FAAA forms, please. Make sure that you've got certified ID on file, making sure that you're identifying your clients, make sure that all of those documents are there. Watch for your red flags and trust your gut and act early. The suspicious matter reporting, it's there to protect you and the client and the community, right? So we're all in this together. And when in doubt, come and talk to us. Moving on to DDO and TMD. This is another element that kind of gets forgotten about and we're identifying in audits. So yes, product providers also do a TMD check, a target market determination check, but we have a legal requirement to do it as well and to keep it on file. In the chat box, could you identify, just let me know how you're confirming your TMDs, how you're recording that you're confirming your TMDs. I'll give you 2 minutes. Anybody? Or if you want to shout it out, just unmute yourself. You can do that. How are you going through this process? Advice, thought process, and attaching to file, great. Download from the product platform website and save to the client file, great. That's a good step. An important one as well. I think that's covered everybody that's actually in the meeting today because you're all from the same groups. Really important, these TMDs we forget about. It's been in place for I think about 5 years now. You actually have to record that you've considered the TMD. You have to record it, and we're forgetting about it. Okay. We need to make sure that the clients actually meet the TMD. Now, the TMD, and I get it, TMDs are very broad, and they seem to be that most people fit within it, but you are still required to actually complete this. In our file note templates that we have on our website, there is a section there for the TMD considerations. Okay, so you can actually utilize that or copy and set that up into your own templates, etc. But it must be done for every single client when you're recommending a product. You must confirm that they meet the TMD. Okay. Yes, the product providers will go and do their own checks after you've submitted the advice and what you're doing for the client, but you're the first kind of barrier to understanding that this is within the TMD. Okay, so it's assessing that product suitability for the client. You have to document how they meet the criteria. So I'm going to go through a couple of tips on how you can actually do that using AI. Is anybody using AI at the moment for any of these types of things? Nobody? No? Okay. I might give you a couple of tips that I've kind of just been playing with. Now, whether that fits within what you're doing is completely up to you, but I'll go through a couple of those tips. You need to report any significant dealings outside the TMD to the product issuer. And you should only be providing personal advice that aligns with the TMD. So you should be checking the TMD before you provide the advice, not afterwards, before. Okay. Definitely before arranging the product. When rebalancing portfolios or switching products, remember underlying products are still products. So having a look at whether the client meets the TMD for those and whether the TMD has recently been updated or reviewed. Okay, so checking the website. So how to use the TMD. So the websites these days are fairly easy. Google search is incredible. There are, I think, Product Rex also has access to TMDs, but they're very easy to find. Okay, very easy. So what you're actually checking the TMD for is the client's objectives, the client's needs, the client risk. Okay, so being careful when you're using AI, if that's how you decide to do it, that you're not giving client information and sharing that on a wider scope, but you can actually put in some prompts to go, is this client within the TMD without using their name, etc. Okay, so you need to make sure the client circumstances also match the TMD profile. So their time frame, and their profile as well, their risk profile, and document your reasoning in the file note or the SLA. Okay, if the client actually doesn't fit the TMD, you cannot recommend the product. It's as simple as that. Cannot recommend the product. If the client insists on proceeding and you've explained to them that they are outside of the target market determination for this, you need to document that clearly in report. Now, I'm not sure that we come across that very often at all, but if that is something, let's have a chat about that and let's see how that actually reflects for that client in particular. You need to report any significant dealings outside the TMD to the product issuer. And you need to use the reporting process outlined by the product provider. So if there are any issues that you can see, you need to be reporting that. Common pitfalls to avoid. So assuming the client fits within the TMD without checking. So we make that assumption because it's quite broad and, all of my clients so far have fit within it. And it's not an excuse. We know that every piece of advice needs to be personalized to the client. Every process needs to be personalized to the client and their circumstances as well. Using the outdated TMD. So as one of our advisors has said, you're downloading that product from the downloading the TMD from the website. Make sure you've got a copy of it as well. Okay. I don't expect to see a copy of the TMD on every single client's file. Okay. If it's a product, and we generally get into this space of, we have our preferred products, as long as you have a copy of the most recent TMD on file and you're referencing that for each of the clients that you're recommending, that's sufficient. I don't need to see the actual TMD on every single client file. Failing to document how the client matches the target market determination, and ignoring reporting obligations for off-label recommendations. I'm not sure how that one cut in, but just making sure that you are actually reporting where you think that the target market determination is incorrect for a start. And if there are any complaints from clients about products too. Okay, so that's another element that we need to be reporting to the product providers. Now, I think that that's all that I had on that, but what I wanted to share with you, and I'm just going to jump in here, is how you can actually do this using AI. So I've got two different approaches that I've been able to utilize. So I'm not sure if anybody's using Adobe Pro, Acrobat Pro. Is anybody using Adobe? Now, I have been using Adobe for a little while within the licensee. It allows for electronic signatures. It allows for tailoring of documents, for combining files, for pulling apart files, reordering documents. It does the whole thing, okay? The cost is very reasonable. It's $37.99 per month per license. Plus, they've just added in this little AI assistant. So I use this over DocuSign. My preference, you might have a different preference. There is no limitation as to how many documents you can send out, etc. Very easy to track. What I have found though is using this little AI assistant, and this AI assistant is an additional $8, so $7.99 per month. This is all inclusive of GST. And I can actually pop, all I need to do is do a search. So if I do, I've got net wealth here, accelerator, plus target market determination. Once I'm signed into my Adobe, like it will always open in here, and I can ask my AI assistant. Okay, so I can really simply do client is, let's do 57 years old, has super balance of, let's do 350,000, risk profile of 30, time frame of 10 plus years, wants to grow super. Okay, so we're covering the age of the client, the balance, the risk profile, their time frame, and what their objectives are. Right? Do they meet? And you can have this set up as a little prompt that you just copy and paste. They meet the TMD and why. Okay, so you just pop that in. So I've just opened that up, and now it goes through all of this. I can put in, like you would do a really comprehensive prompt of the TMD version. And what you can then do is it will go through and it goes, okay, so this is the client. Yes, the client meets the TMD for this product and the version, and here's why. Okay, it gives you the reasons. So based on these factors, the client falls within the target market for Super Accelerator Plus version 4. You can then copy that and pop that into whatever document you need. Okay, so that can go straight into Xplan, that can go straight into Advisor Logic, that can go straight into Xeppo, any of the products that you're using, it can go straight into that. So simple, easy. There's also, you can use ChatGPT. Okay, so I've done one here. So I've just included, so I just went and got the URL, right? I popped it in here. And then you can go for this TMD. Sorry. Okay. Client is, I've forgotten all my details. Create file note to demonstrate if client meets the TMD and why, include TMD version details. And it will go through and it will do this for you. Okay, it gives you space to actually put in the client name and the advisor name, the profile summary, and then it does the assessment and a conclusion. Okay, and then you can put it into, yes, in Word, please, and it will pop up a Word document that you're able to use. Just takes a couple of minutes, but you would again have all of these prompts available. Okay, so given that you're not giving any client details, client names, sorry, you're not sharing information that you shouldn't be, but it means that you don't also you're not also going through everything in great detail in capturing this information. Okay, so then again, we've just got it. Oh, I had one previously. We've just got it sitting here, and you can keep that on file. Any thoughts about that initially? Whether that would work for you, whether that wouldn't work for you, what else do you think that you need to consider in those things? Obviously, there is some element with ChatGPT and any of the AI where they hallucinate at times. And the information could be incorrect. You still need to know your TMDs, okay? You still need to have that copy on file from your practice level, and you still need to check that you believe that that client does fit that. Okay, you know the client. Your paraplanners can do this, your admin staff can do this, but you still need to make sure that you are confident that that client meets that TMD. Any questions about that? Please unmute and have a chat. I've got 10 more minutes. I've burned through this pretty quickly. Anything else that we've covered today that you need a little bit more information about? Yep, going to try Adobe AI for the TMDs. I'm happy for you to trial anything that obviously being aware of client privacy and not sharing client personal information, but these can be really simple, easy ways. And I'm not sure how Claris works, Rocky, whether there's an element of AI in Claris that can read other documents and if that can pop it in. I don't know if you've had a play or had to think about that before.
Making improvements regularly all the
Yeah.
time. So
Yeah.
Keep an eye on it.
Yeah, it might just be something that you're able to embed within your actual process. So for those who haven't been using or haven't used Claris AI as yet, the team at Main Street have been using it and have had some great success with it in terms of recording client meetings and taking those file notes, actionable items out of that. But also what it does do that other software doesn't have set up, because it's set up for financial planners in particular, is you can actually set up templates and it will generate. Oh, great! Nick's really using it as well. It's really good. You can set up your templates and it will populate your templates for you. Okay, so you don't need to do the prompts. It will create those for you, which is really cool. There was some new functionality within Claris recently too, wasn't there, Rocky?
Yeah, there has been, and it's that you can actually record straight into it.
Yeah.
We need to take some time to have a play. I haven't had
Yep.
time this month.
No. So this is an evolving scenario with with all of this AI functionality. If you're going to be using AI to record your client meetings, I highly recommend it. But I would also recommend that you use something that is tailored for financial planners. There are a number of them in the market at the moment, and that there are a number of them that are actually created here in Australia by financial planners. I can circulate a list of them, but they're really good and they're ever evolving. And it just takes that pressure off of having to do all of your file notes after the session and remember everything that you've said. It's all there. Okay, so remembering too, you will come, if you're going to be using these types of products, space. So if you're recording things, it may not be feasible that you keep the actual recording of it for a long time, but you keep the transcript. Okay, and the reason being is that it just becomes untenable with the amount of space that you need to use to keep those files. Okay, that's it from me for now. We do have our next session at 11 o'clock to talk about ethics, which is incredibly important as well, and very interesting. There's a few case studies that we'll go through from the financial services and credit panel, some of the outcomes of that. So I will see you all back online, hopefully at 11 a.m. If you've got any questions, please let me know. Thanks, guys.